My name is Marina, 29 years old, and working as a financial analyst in Chicago. I left my small hometown of Indianapolis 5 years ago to build my career, but I've always stayed connected to my roots. Every month I send money home to help my family after my father's health took a turn for the worse. I thought we had the perfect long-distance relationship until last Sunday when my Uncle Jack sent me a video. My hands trembled as I watched what my family really thought of me when I wasn't around. Before I tell you what was on that video, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that like button if you've ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Indianapolis, where life seemed pretty normal on the surface. My parents, Thomas and Diana, had built a decent life for us until my father's construction business failed when I was in high school. Dad had always been the proud provider, while Mom stayed home to take care of the house and family. Looking back, I can see how much his identity was tied to being the breadwinner, and how deeply the business failure wounded his pride. My younger brother Kevin is 5 years younger than me. We were close growing up, bonded by our shared experiences, navigating our father's volatile moods whenever money got tight. Kevin was always the charmer of the family, able to lighten tense moments with humor and distract Dad from his financial worries. Uncle Jack, my father's younger brother, was always an interesting figure in our family. Unlike my father, who prioritized stability and tradition, Uncle Jack was the risk-taker who never settled down. There was a constant undercurrent of tension between them, especially when Uncle Jack would visit and inadvertently highlight the constraints of my father's life. Looking back, I realize their rivalry went deeper than I understood as a child. School was always my refuge. I excelled academically, finding comfort in the predictability of hard work yielding good results. By senior year, I'd earned a partial scholarship to study finance at Northwestern University. I remember my parents' reaction when I got my acceptance letter. There was pride in their eyes, certainly, but also something else that I couldn't quite identify then. "That's wonderful, Marina," my mother had said, hugging me. "But it's so expensive even with the scholarship, and so far from home." "You'll do great things," my father added. "Just don't forget about us when you're successful." It was a pattern that would repeat itself throughout my achievements. Congratulations quickly followed by subtle reminders of what my success might cost the family. At the time, I dismissed it as normal parental anxiety about their daughter leaving home. During my college years, my parents' financial situation deteriorated further. Dad struggled to find steady construction work as the economy fluctuated, and his pride prevented him from taking what he considered lower-status jobs. Mom called weekly, her voice tight with worry as she detailed new bills they were struggling to pay. By my junior year, I was working 2 campus jobs alongside my full course load, sending half my earnings home. It wasn't much, but it helped keep their utilities on and food in the refrigerator. I told myself it was temporary, just until Dad found steady work again. When I graduated and landed a position as a financial analyst at a prestigious firm in Chicago, I was thrilled. The starting salary seemed enormous compared to my student budget, even with the burden of student loans. I rented a tiny studio apartment in a less desirable neighborhood to maximize what I could save and send home. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," my mother said during our weekly call after I got my first paycheck. "Your father and I were wondering if you might be able to help a little more now that you have that fancy job. The property taxes are due next month." That was the beginning. What started as occasional requests for help with unexpected expenses gradually morphed into regular financial support. Every month, I would transfer money for their emergencies. The water heater broke, the car needed repairs, Dad's medication wasn't fully covered by insurance. I never questioned these needs even as they multiplied. My best friend Taylor was the first to raise concerns about my family's increasing dependence. "Marina, you've been helping them out for over a year now," she pointed out during one of our rare dinner outings. I had just finished explaining why I couldn't join her weekend trip to Lake Michigan. "Don't they have any plan to get back on their feet?" "They're trying." I defended them automatically. "Dad's health makes it difficult and Mom has to take care of him." But Taylor's question planted a seed of doubt that I tried my best to ignore. My weekend routine became predictable. Sunday morning video calls with the family that would start with casual catch-up, but inevitably turned to financial concerns. I'd listen as they detailed new expenses, my stomach nodding as I mentally recalculated my budget to accommodate their needs. "We're so blessed to have you," Mom would say after I promised to send money. "I don't know what we'd do without you." Those words made me feel valued, needed. They were a balm against the loneliness of my small apartment and the exhaustion from working overtime to earn bonuses. By the end of my second year in Chicago, I was sending nearly 40% of my monthly income back to Indianapolis. My own apartment remained sparsely furnished. My wardrobe consisted of the same professional outfits I rotated carefully, and my social life dwindled as I turned down invitations to save money, but I told myself it was worth it. Family comes first, after all. 3 years into my career at the financial firm, my hard work paid off with a significant promotion and salary increase. I was ecstatic when I got the news, immediately calling my parents to share the achievement. Their reaction was exactly as I'd anticipated. "That's wonderful news, honey," Mom exclaimed, genuine pride in her voice before she added, "This couldn't have come at a better time. Your father's medication costs just went up again, and we're behind on the electric bill." Dad got on the phone next. "Always knew you had it in you, Marina," he said gruffly. "Say, with this new position, you'll probably be able to help us out a bit more, right? We're really struggling here." I felt the familiar weight of obligation settle onto my shoulders, heavier than before. "Of course, Dad. I'll send some extra this month." The words came automatically, even as I felt a flicker of disappointment that they hadn't asked a single question about my new role or responsibilities. 2 months after my promotion, the real bombshell dropped. During our Sunday call, Mom tearfully explained that they were 3 months behind on their mortgage payments. The bank had sent a foreclosure warning. "We didn't want to worry you," she sobbed. "We've been trying to manage, but with your father's medical bills and the house repairs we needed last fall, we're going to lose the home you grew up in, Marina." The thought of my childhood home being foreclosed upon, my parents potentially homeless, was unthinkable. Without hesitation, I offered to cover the mortgage payments until they got back on their feet. The gratitude in their voices convinced me I was doing the right thing, despite the sinking feeling in my stomach when I calculated what this would mean for my finances. I had been saving for a down payment on my own small condo, planning to stop throwing money away on rent. That dream would have to wait. My retirement contributions were reduced to the bare minimum needed for the company match. My student loans would take years longer to pay off with only minimum payments. But family was more important than financial independence, I told myself. They would do the same for me. What I didn't realize then was how this decision would transform my relationship with my family. The mortgage payment wasn't a temporary measure as I'd initially believed. Month after month, the payment came due, and my parents made it clear they expected me to cover it. My support had shifted from emergency assistance to expected obligation. That summer, I had to cancel a vacation I'd been planning with Taylor to Puerto Rico. We'd been talking about it for years, had finally booked the flights during an airfare sale, and I'd been looking forward to a break from the Chicago winter and my high-pressure job. "I can't believe you're canceling again," Taylor said, making no effort to hide her frustration. "This is the third trip you've backed out of. Your family is taking advantage of you, Marina." "You don't understand," I replied defensively. "They need me. Dad's health is getting worse." But was it really? I realized I hadn't actually received any updates about specific medical issues recently, just vague references to "your father's condition" whenever money was discussed. The monthly calls with my family grew more frequent, often coming right before bills were due. My mother developed an arsenal of subtle guilt trips that I only recognized in retrospect. "We barely keep the heat at 65 degrees to save money," or "we've been eating a lot of pasta and beans this month," were common phrases. When I'd suggest ways they could reduce expenses, the conversation would quickly shift. "We've cut everything we can, honey. There's nothing left to cut." Around this time, Kevin dropped out of the community college he'd been half-heartedly attending. My parents explained he was having a hard time focusing on school and needed to find himself. He moved back into his old bedroom, and from what I could gather during our video calls, spent most of his time playing video games and hanging out with friends. Unlike me at his age, he wasn't working part-time or contributing to the household expenses. When I gently suggested he might look for a job, my mother quickly defended him. He's applying for things, but it's so hard out there. Not everyone is as lucky as you were, Marina. Lucky. As if my 60-hour work weeks and sacrificed social life were just good fortune. My 29th birthday fell on a Tuesday that year. I bought myself a small cupcake from the bakery near my office and ate it alone in my apartment that evening. My parents had called earlier, but the conversation quickly turned to the property tax bill that had just arrived. They didn't even mention my birthday until I brought it up almost as an afterthought. "Oh, happy birthday, honey. We've been so stressed about these bills we almost forgot. Kevin, say happy birthday to your sister." I heard a muffled happy birthday from somewhere in the background. That night, staring at the lone candle burning down on my cupcake, I felt a heaviness that wasn't just financial burden. The headaches I'd been experiencing grew more frequent. Sleep became elusive, my mind racing with calculations and worries about how to stretch my next paycheck. Some mornings I would wake with my jaw sore from clenching my teeth all night. Taylor's concern became impossible to ignore. After I canceled dinner plans for the third time in a month, she showed up at my apartment with takeout. "This has to stop, Marina," she said bluntly, setting cartons of Thai food on my small kitchen table. "You look exhausted. When was the last time you did something for yourself?" "Their family," I said weakly. "What am I supposed to do? Let them lose their house?" "Have they looked into refinancing, downsizing? Has your dad applied for disability benefits if his health is so bad? Has your mom considered getting a part-time job? Has your brother considered, I don't know, contributing anything?" Each question hit like a dart, piercing the bubble of rationalization I'd built around my family's financial demands. I didn't have answers because I'd never asked these questions myself. "They're doing their best," I said automatically, but the words sounded hollow even to my own ears. "And what about you?" Taylor pressed. "You're living like a college student despite making good money. You've canceled every trip we've planned. You never buy yourself anything nice. You're burning out. And for what? So your adult brother can play video games all day." I defended my family that night as I always did, but Taylor's words lingered, raising questions I couldn't easily dismiss. Still, when the mortgage payment came due the following week, I transferred the money without hesitation, depleting my savings account to a balance that made me nauseated to look at. Sunday mornings were usually peaceful for me. It was the one morning I allowed myself to sleep past 6, making a proper breakfast instead of grabbing coffee on the go. That particular Sunday started like any other. I was midway through my scrambled eggs when my phone chimed with a text message from Uncle Jack. We weren't particularly close, and he rarely reached out directly, which immediately caught my attention. "Marina, you need to see this." "I'm sorry." The message was followed by a video attachment. I tapped play, expecting perhaps a family moment I'd missed or some update about my father's health. Instead, I saw my parents' dining room table, the one where I'd eaten countless family meals growing up. Mom, Dad, and Kevin were seated around it, plates of pot roast half-eaten before them. Uncle Jack must have been filming from his seat, his presence partially revealed by his arm, occasionally visible at the edge of the frame. "Marina's coming home for Thanksgiving, right?" Uncle Jack's voice asked from behind the camera. My father snorted. "If she can fit us into her important big city schedule." "Thomas," my mother admonished, but there was no real rebuke in her tone. "She's sending the mortgage payment on Tuesday, so I'm sure she'll make time for a phone call at least." "She owes us that much," my father said, stabbing a piece of carrot with his fork. "After all we sacrificed to raise her." I felt my heart rate quicken, eggs forgotten as I stared at the screen. "She makes 6 figures in that fancy job," my mother continued, "but sends us barely enough to cover the basics. Do you know what Janet's daughter bought her parents for their anniversary? A cruise? A whole cruise." "Marina's always been selfish," Kevin interjected, mouthful of food. "She's just showing off with her big city job while we're stuck here struggling." "Now, that's not entirely fair," Uncle Jack's voice defended me mildly. "She sends quite a bit of money home from what you've told me." That mild defense seemed to trigger something in my father. His face flushed red. "What would you know about it, Jack? You've always taken her side. That girl owes everything to us. We gave up vacations, new cars, everything to raise her. Now she's got that fancy degree we helped pay for, and what do we get? The bare minimum to keep the bank from taking the house. Worthless burden." my mother muttered, shaking her head. All that education and she can't even figure out how to properly support her family. We should ask for more next month, Kevin suggested. Tell her the furnace is acting up again. My mother nodded. Good idea. She'll never know the difference, and we could use some extra for Christmas shopping. The video continued for another minute or two more of the same sentiment expressed in various ways. My family's true feelings about me laid bare in high definition. The last thing I heard before the video ended was my father saying, "She's so gullible, believes everything we tell her about bills and expenses." I sat frozen, phone in hand, eggs congealing on the plate before me. My first instinct was that this must be some terrible joke or misunderstanding. I played the video again, and again. There was no mistaking what I'd heard. No possible alternative interpretation of my mother calling me a worthless burden while eating food purchased with money I'd sent them. The physical reaction hit suddenly. My hands began to shake so violently I had to set the phone down. Nausea rose in my throat, and I barely made it to the bathroom before emptying the contents of my stomach. Kneeling on the cold tile floor, I found myself gasping for breath, tears streaming down my face. This couldn't be happening. There had to be some explanation. Perhaps they were joking, though nothing in their tones or expressions suggested humor. Perhaps they were having a particularly bad day and didn't mean what they said. But the casual way they discussed manipulating me for more money suggested this wasn't a one-time conversation. I managed to make it back to the couch where I curled into a ball phone clutched in my hand. Without thinking, I called Taylor. They think I'm a burden, I choked out when she answered. All this time I've been killing myself to support them, and they think I'm selfish. Marina, what happened? Taylor's voice was instantly alert with concern. Uncle Jack sent me a video. They were all sitting around the dinner table just saying awful things about me, saying I owe them, planning how to lie to get more money from me. I could hardly get the words out between sobs. I'm coming over, Taylor said firmly. Don't do anything. I'll be there in 20 minutes. While waiting for Taylor, I forced myself to watch the video one more time. Each word felt like a physical blow. The casual cruelty in my mother's voice when she called me worthless. The contempt in my father's expression. Kevin's smirk as he suggested lying to me. These were the people I'd sacrificed everything, for the reason my apartment was sparsely furnished, why I hadn't taken a vacation in years, why I worked overtime every chance I got. Taylor arrived with a grocery bag containing ice cream and wine. She sat beside me on the couch, her face grim as I showed her the video. Those absolute monsters, she whispered when it finished. Her hand found mine and squeezed tightly. Marina, I'm so sorry. Maybe they didn't mean it, I said weakly, some part of me still desperate to defend them. Maybe they were just having a bad day. Listen to me, Taylor said, turning to face me directly. No one who loves you would ever speak about you that way, bad day or not. They called you worthless while cashing your checks. They plotted to lie to you for more money. That's not love, Marina. That's exploitation. Deep down, I knew she was right, but years of conditioning made it almost impossible to accept. My phone rang, Uncle Jack's name flashing on the screen. I need to take this, I told Taylor, who nodded and stepped into the kitchen to give me privacy. Did you watch it? Uncle Jack asked without preamble when I answered. Yes, I managed. Why would you send me that? He sighed heavily. Because you deserve to know. I've been watching this happen for years, Marina. I tried talking to your father about it, but he just accuses me of interfering. Last night was the final straw. I couldn't let them keep using you this way. How long? I asked, my voice barely audible. How long have they been talking about me like this? As long as I can remember, he admitted. It got worse after you moved to Chicago and started making good money. They don't see you as their daughter anymore. They see you as their meal ticket. The confirmation broke something inside me. The family I thought I had, the loving parents I believed were proud of me despite their financial struggles, the brother I thought was just going through a tough phase. None of it was real. It had been a performance designed to keep the money flowing. I thanked Uncle Jack for his honesty, though the truth felt like swallowing broken glass. When I hung up, Taylor was waiting with a glass of wine and understanding in her eyes. What are you going to do? She asked softly. I took the wine with trembling hands. I don't know yet, but I can't keep doing this. The hardest part wasn't seeing the video. It wasn't hearing my family's true thoughts about me. The hardest part was getting up the next morning, washing my face, and pretending nothing had changed for our scheduled Sunday video call. My laptop screen illuminated with their faces at 11 o'clock sharp. Mom's hair was freshly styled. Dad sat in his usual recliner. Kevin hovered in the background, offering a half-hearted wave before disappearing presumably to his room. "There's our girl," Mom exclaimed with a smile I once thought genuine, but now saw as calculated. "How's the big city treating you?" "Fine," I replied, amazed at how normal my voice sounded despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. "Work's been busy. How are things there?" And like clockwork, the litany of complaints and financial woes began. The water bill was higher than expected. Dad's prescription copay had increased. The property taxes were due soon. Each statement landed differently, now filtered through the lens of what I knew to be true. "The mortgage payment is coming up Tuesday." Mom reminded me, her tone shifting to that carefully calibrated mix of anxiety and expectation I now recognized as manipulation. "With everything else this month, we're really counting on you." "Of course," I heard myself say. "I'll transfer it as usual." "That's our Marina," Dad said, his pride now obviously performative. "Always reliable." I noticed things I'd been blind to before. The new throw pillows on the couch behind them, Mom's fresh manicure, the shopping bag from an electronics store visible in the corner, small luxuries purchased while I ate ramen for dinner to save money for their mortgage. The call lasted 30 minutes. I nodded and responded appropriately while my mind cataloged years of similar conversations, reinterpreting them through this new painful understanding. When we finally said goodbye, I closed my laptop and sat in silence, trying to reconcile the family I thought I had with the reality Uncle Jack's video had revealed. The following week at work was a blur. I moved through my days on autopilot, reviewing financial reports and attending meetings while my personal life imploded. Colleagues noticed my distraction. "Everything okay, Marina?" my supervisor asked after a meeting where I'd been uncharacteristically quiet. "You seem a little off this week." "Just some family stuff," I replied vaguely. "I'm handling it." At night, alone in my apartment, I reviewed years of text messages and emails from my family. Financial emergencies that always seemed to arise right after I received a bonus or raise. The guilt trips whenever I mentioned potentially visiting friends instead of coming home. The subtle digs about my fancy lifestyle that I now realized was anything but fancy. I checked my social media feed, scrolling back through months of photos I'd previously skimmed. There was Kevin with a brand new gaming system posted just 3 days after I'd sent extra money for what Mom called utility bills. There were my parents at a weekend getaway at a lakeside cabin during a month they'd told me Dad's medical bills had wiped out their savings. Small inconsistencies that built into a damning pattern of deception. On Wednesday, I took a personal day and visited a financial advisor. I brought bank statements showing years of transfers to my parents' tax documents, everything relevant to my financial situation. "Based on what you've shown me," the advisor said gently after reviewing my documents, "you've been supporting your family beyond what would be considered reasonable, especially given your income level and your own financial goals." "I thought they needed it." I said, the words hollow in my mouth. "Many people help family members through rough patches," she acknowledged. "But this pattern suggests long-term dependence rather than temporary assistance. And you mentioned they added your name to their mortgage without your knowledge." I nodded, recalling the document Mom had asked me to just sign quickly during my last visit home. I'd trusted her completely, not reading the fine print that made me legally responsible for the loan. "That's concerning," the advisor said carefully. "At minimum, I'd suggest consulting with an attorney about removing your name from that obligation." That afternoon, I had my first appointment with a therapist Taylor had recommended. Dr. Winters listened attentively as I explained my situation, showing her Uncle Jack's video, and describing the years of financial support. "What you're describing has elements of financial abuse," she said when I finished. "Your family has been exploiting your sense of obligation and manipulating your emotions to gain access to your resources." "But they're my family," I protested weakly. "Aren't we supposed to help family?" There's a difference between mutual support and exploitation, Dr. Winters explained. Healthy families respect boundaries. They don't make one member responsible for everyone else's well-being while contributing nothing themselves. I left that session with homework to write down all the things I'd given up to support my family and separately what I'd received from them in return. The imbalance when I completed the exercise that night was staggering. On Friday evening, I received a text from my brother. "Mom's worried about the mortgage payment. Can you send it early? The bank called." I didn't respond. For the first time in years, I chose not to immediately accommodate their request. Instead, I sat with the discomfort, the guilt, the fear of disappointing them. And slowly beneath those conditioned responses, I found something new: anger. Righteous, clarifying anger at being used and discarded by the people who were supposed to love me most. The mortgage payment notification arrived in my email inbox precisely 1 week after I'd watched the video. Payment due blinked in bold red letters, a deadline that had controlled my financial life for years. But this time something had changed. I was changing. The week had been a blur of revelations as I methodically documented the extent of my family's financial manipulation. I'd created a spreadsheet of every payment I'd sent them over the past 5 years, categorized by their stated purpose. The total was staggering. Nearly $120,000 since I'd graduated. Money that could have purchased a home of my own, funded a comfortable retirement account, or eliminated my student debt entirely. I'd consulted with an attorney, Ms. Ramirez, who specialized in financial matters. Her expression had grown increasingly grave as I shared details of my situation. "The fact that they added your name to the mortgage without fully informing you of the implications is deeply concerning," she said, reviewing the documents I'd brought. "And you say you discovered they took out a second mortgage last year?" I nodded. After our initial consultation, I'd done some investigating and discovered the second mortgage through public records. A $30,000 home equity loan my parents had never mentioned, despite my name being attached to the property. "They've exposed you to significant financial liability without your informed consent," Ms. Ramirez explained. "We have grounds to petition for removal of your name from these obligations given the circumstances." The attorney had helped me draft a formal letter documenting my financial contributions and establishing that future mortgage payments would not be forthcoming. It sat in an envelope on my kitchen counter, ready to be mailed after the confrontation I knew was inevitable. The day before the payment was due, I received no fewer than 5 calls from my parents and 3 from Kevin. I let them all go to voicemail, each message more urgent than the last. "Marina, honey, just checking that the mortgage payment is set up for tomorrow. Call us back." "Marina, the bank called again. We need that payment. Call immediately." "Marina, this is serious. If you're having problems with the transfer, let us know so we can make arrangements." By the final message, my mother's voice had shifted from concerned to angry. "I don't know what game you're playing, Marina, but people's lives are at stake here. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because of this stress. If you're punishing us for something, just say it instead of ignoring our calls." I listened to each message, carefully noting the escalating manipulation tactics. The focus on their needs, the guilt trips, the vague medical concerns that couldn't be verified, the assumption that any deviation from my usual compliance must be some form of punishment rather than a legitimate boundary. Meanwhile, I'd been busy building a support network. Taylor had introduced me to her friend Alyssa, who had experienced similar financial exploitation from her own parents. We'd met for coffee, and her perspective had strengthened my resolve. "The hardest part is breaking the pattern," Alyssa told me. "They've trained you to feel responsible for their welfare. That programming runs deep." I'd also joined an online support group for adult children of emotionally manipulative parents, where stories eerily similar to mine helped me understand I wasn't alone. With each shared experience, my determination grew. After consulting with Dr. Winters, I developed a simple but firm script for the inevitable confrontation. I would not yell. I would not accuse. I would simply state facts and establish boundaries. The payment due date arrived. For the first time in years, I did not transfer money to my parents' mortgage account. Instead, I transferred the exact same amount into a new savings account I'd opened for myself, the first step in rebuilding my financial independence. My phone began ringing at 7:30 that morning. By noon, I had 17 missed calls and a flurry of increasingly frantic text messages. At precisely 2 o'clock, I sent a brief message to my parents. I need to speak with all of you tonight at 7 p.m. Video call. It's important. My mother responded immediately. What about the mortgage payment the bank called? We'll lose the house. I did not respond to that manipulation attempt. Instead, I left work early, stopping to pick up dinner from my favorite Thai restaurant, a small luxury I'd denied myself for too long. I arrived home, changed into comfortable clothes, and prepared for the conversation that would forever alter my relationship with my family. At exactly 7 o'clock, I initiated the video call. They answered immediately, all three of them crowded around the computer screen. My father's face was flushed with anger, my mother's eyes red from either real or strategic tears, Kevin hovering anxiously in the background. What the hell is going on, Marina? My father demanded before I could even speak. The bank called twice today. They're threatening to start foreclosure proceedings if the payment isn't made by tomorrow. I took a deep breath, centering myself as Dr. Winters had taught me. I saw the video, I said simply. A moment of confused silence followed. Then I watched understanding dawn on their faces, followed quickly by defensive anger. What video? My mother asked, but her voice lacked conviction. She knew exactly what I meant. Uncle Jack recorded your dinner conversation last week, the one where you called me a worthless burden while planning how to get more money from me. The one where Dad said I was gullible and believed everything you told me about expenses. That was taken completely out of context, my father blustered, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine through the screen. Jack had no right to record a private family conversation, my mother added indignantly. He's always been jealous of our relationship with you. I remained calm. The context seems pretty clear to me. You've been using me as your personal ATM for years while talking about me with contempt behind my back. That's not fair, Kevin interjected. We were just having a bad day. You don't know how hard it is here. Actually, I think I do know, I replied. I've been paying your mortgage, your bills, your emergencies for 5 years now. I've sacrificed my own financial security, my social life, any chance at building my own life to keep all of you comfortable. We're your family, my mother said, her voice dropping into the wounded tone I now recognized as calculated. After all we did raising you, the sacrifices we made? I've seen your social media, I interrupted. The weekend trips, the shopping sprees, Kevin's new gaming system purchased the same week you told me you couldn't afford groceries. The evidence is all there. My father's strategy shifted from denial to attack. So this is how you repay us, by abandoning your family when we need you after everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me lately? I asked quietly. In the past 5 years, what support have you provided me? Emotional, financial, any kind of support at all. The silence that followed was answer enough. I've spoken to a financial advisor and an attorney, I continued. I have documentation of every penny I've sent you totaling over $120,000 since I graduated. I also know about the second mortgage you took out last year without telling me, despite my name being on the property. My mother's face went pale. We were going to tell you about that. We just didn't want to worry you. I'm done being manipulated, I said firmly. I will not be sending any more mortgage payments. I will not be covering any more emergencies. I'm removing my name from your mortgage and home equity loan with or without your cooperation. You can't do this to us, my father shouted, his face turning an alarming shade of red. We'll lose everything. You have options, I replied calmly. Dad can apply for the disability benefits he qualifies for with his condition. Mom can get a part-time job. Kevin can work full-time instead of playing video games all day. You can downsize to a home you can actually afford. There are solutions that don't involve exploiting me. This is about that friend of yours, isn't it? My mother accused. Taylor has always been jealous of your relationship with us. She's turned you against your own family. This is about respect, I corrected her. And honesty. 2 things that have been missing from our relationship for a long time. Kevin, who had been relatively quiet, suddenly burst out, You think you're so much better than us with your fancy Chicago job? You've always been selfish. I've been sending 40% of my income home every month for years, I stated flatly. That's the opposite of selfish. If you do this, you're no longer part of this family. My father threatened his final manipulation tactic. Is that what you want, to be alone? For a moment, the old fear clutched at my heart, the terror of losing my family, of being truly alone. But then I remembered the video their true feelings about me laid bare when they thought I couldn't hear. I wasn't losing a loving family. I was freeing myself from people who saw me as nothing more than a resource to exploit. I'm not ending our relationship, I said carefully. I'm changing it. If you want to have me in your lives, it needs to be based on mutual respect and honesty, not financial dependence. I've prepared a letter outlining everything I've contributed and my decision going forward. You'll receive it tomorrow. You'll regret this, my mother said, tears streaming down her face. When you need us, we won't be there. You haven't been there for years, I replied softly. I just didn't want to see it. I ended the call before they could respond, my whole body trembling with adrenaline. Within minutes, my phone exploded with texts and calls which I silenced. I needed space to process what had just happened, to honor the boundary I'd finally established. Uncle Jack called an hour later. Your mother just called me hysterical, he said when I answered. Are you okay? I'm better than I've been in years, I replied, surprised to find it was true. Beneath the anxiety and grief, I felt something unfamiliar: freedom. I'm proud of you, he said simply. It took courage to stand up to them. I couldn't have done it without seeing the truth, I acknowledged. Thank you for that, even though it hurt. There's something else you should know, Uncle Jack added hesitantly. Your father's health issues. They're not as severe as they've led you to believe. He has high blood pressure and some joint pain from years of construction work, but nothing that prevents him from working. He's been playing golf twice a week with his buddies. The revelation should have hurt, but instead it simply confirmed what I already suspected. The web of lies was unraveling, leaving nothing but the stark truth: I had been systematically manipulated and exploited by the people I trusted most. That night I cried for the family I thought I had, for the relationships built on love and respect that existed only in my imagination. But as painful as the truth was, it was also liberating. For the first time in years, I went to sleep without calculating how to stretch my next paycheck to cover everyone else's needs. The relief was profound. 6 months after I stopped paying my family's mortgage, I moved into a new apartment. Nothing extravagant, but in a safer neighborhood with large windows that flooded the space with natural light. I'd furnished it slowly, thoughtfully, choosing pieces that brought me joy rather than just fulfilling basic functions. The financial recovery had been gradual but steady. I'd worked with Ms. Ramirez to successfully remove my name from my parents' mortgage and home equity loan, though the process had been contentious. My parents had initially refused to cooperate, hoping their obstruction would force me back into supporting them. It hadn't worked. With evidence of potential fraud and how my signature was obtained, the bank had eventually relented. I'd established a comprehensive financial plan with clear priorities, building an emergency fund, catching up on retirement contributions, and accelerating payments on my student loans. For the first time since graduation, I was investing in my own future rather than subsidizing my family's present. Therapy with Dr. Winters continued weekly, helping me work through the complex grief of family betrayal. What you're experiencing is called disenfranchised grief, she explained during one session. Society doesn't have clear rituals or acknowledgement for the loss of family relationships that aren't working, especially when the family members are still alive. The work wasn't easy. I had nightmares where I was homeless because I'd failed to support my family. Days where guilt threatened to overwhelm my resolve. Moments where I almost called to check if they were okay, if they had enough to eat, if the utilities were still on. But each time I returned to the evidence, the video, the years of manipulation, the one-way flow of support that had nearly destroyed my financial future, I'd also expanded my support network beyond just Taylor. I joined a recreational volleyball league, something I'd enjoyed in college but abandoned due to lack of time and money. I reconnected with former classmates living in Chicago. I volunteered at a financial literacy program for young adults, finding purpose in helping others avoid the pitfalls I'd experienced. My relationship with my family had transformed dramatically. After the initial explosion and weeks of angry messages, silence had fallen. 2 months after our confrontation, my mother had sent a carefully worded email acknowledging that perhaps they had become too dependent on my support, though she stopped short of apologizing for their behavior or words. I'd responded with clear boundaries. I was open to rebuilding our relationship, but only with honest communication and mutual respect. No financial requests would be entertained. No guilt trips would be tolerated. Any future relationship would be built on healthier foundations than the exploitative dynamic that had defined the past 5 years. My father had been the most resistant to this new reality. His pride, already wounded by his business failure years ago, couldn't accept that his daughter had stood up to him. But necessity proved a powerful motivator. 3 months after I stopped sending money, he found a job as a supervisor at a building supply company work that accommodated his actual physical limitations while utilizing his construction knowledge. Kevin's transformation had been the most surprising. Faced with actual consequences for the first time in his adult life, he'd initially lashed out blaming me for abandoning the family. But when our parents could no longer shield him from financial reality, he'd eventually found steady work at a local tech store. Our relationship remained strained, but occasional text messages suggested he was beginning to understand my perspective. Uncle Jack had become my strongest family connection, our relationship deepening into genuine friendship. He provided updates about my parents when appropriate but respected my boundaries without question. The weekend after moving into my new apartment, I took my first real vacation in years, a trip to Lake Michigan with Taylor that we'd been trying to take since I moved to Chicago. Standing on the shore watching the sunrise paint the water in shades of gold and pink, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. "You seem different," Taylor observed as we walked along the beach. "Lighter somehow." "I am," I replied, realizing the truth of it. For years I was carrying not just my own life but everyone else's too. I never realized how heavy it was until I put it down. I'd begun dating again cautiously at first. My last relationship had ended largely because I couldn't afford the time or money to nurture it while supporting my family. Now I was rediscovering parts of myself that had been sacrificed to obligation. My love of art museums, my interest in cooking classes, my enjoyment of live music in small venues. Perhaps the most meaningful development came through an unexpected channel. After sharing my experience in the support group, I'd been approached about starting a specialized group for adult children dealing with financial exploitation from family members. Every Tuesday evening, I met with 6 others in similar situations, sharing strategies and support. Helping others navigate their own boundary-setting journeys had become a source of purpose and healing. About 5 months after our confrontation, I received a call from my father. It was the first time he'd called rather than texted since I'd stopped sending money. "Marina," he said, his voice lacking the demanding tone I'd grown accustomed to. "I've been doing some thinking." A long pause followed. "The things you heard in that video, I was wrong to say them. You were never a burden. You were the only one holding us all up, and we took advantage of that." It wasn't a complete apology, but it was the closest my father had ever come to acknowledging his role in our dysfunctional relationship. We spoke for nearly an hour more honestly than we had in years. He talked about his shame at failing in business, how supporting me through college had been his last act as a successful provider before everything fell apart. How watching me succeed while he struggled had twisted his pride into resentment. "I'm not asking for anything," he said toward the end of our conversation. "I just wanted you to know I'm working on myself, trying to be better." Yeah. My mother's steps toward change were more tentative, her manipulative patterns more deeply ingrained, but even she had begun to show small signs of growth. When she called on my birthday, she asked about my life, my work, my friends, questions she'd rarely bothered with when her focus had been on extracting financial support. I'd established clear parameters for potential reconciliation. Any relationship moving forward would require acknowledgement of past behavior, consistent, respectful communication, and absolute adherence to financial boundaries. I'd made it clear that rebuilding trust would be a long, gradual process that couldn't be rushed or forced. The journey wasn't over. Some days were harder than others. The programming ran deep, as Alyssa had warned me. But with each month that passed, I grew more confident in my worth beyond what I could provide materially for others. I developed a healthier relationship with money, seeing it as a tool for building my future rather than a resource to be drained by others' needs. Looking back at the frightened, exhausted woman I'd been 6 months earlier, the woman who thought family love was measured in bank transfers and sacrificed dreams, I hardly recognized her. The journey from that state to where I stood now had been painful but necessary. I'd learned that real love doesn't come with invoices attached. That family obligation shouldn't mean family exploitation. That my worth wasn't determined by how much I gave, but by who I was. As I sat on my new couch in my sunlit apartment that evening, I felt profound gratitude toward Uncle Jack for his courage in showing me the truth toward Taylor, for her unwavering support, and even toward my family for the painful lessons they'd taught me. Most of all, I felt grateful to the part of myself that had finally found the strength to say enough. The path forward wasn't perfectly clear, but for the first time in years, it was truly mine to choose. And that made all the difference. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who took advantage of your generosity or struggled with the guilt of saying no to loved ones? Share your experience in the comments below. Remember that establishing healthy boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for genuine relationships. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember your worth isn't measured by how much you give to others, but by how much you value yourself.